Test, test, test. Hi, welcome everyone. And welcome.
Hello.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to pause this and great. So I'll hand it off to Vanessa.
Great. Hello. Good evening. Okay. Andrea Scarborough.
Present.
Bilal Key. Diane Song Yu. Gil Lopez. Janet Ferreira.
Present. Sorry.
Hi, Gil. Janet Ferreira. Jasmine McPherson. Jennifer Maldonado. Jenny Lynn.
Present.
Angela Moore. Catherine Servino.
Present. Present.
Hi. Mac Lawrence. Rachel Boglin.
Hi, I'm here.
Richard Nunez Lawrence.
And I've seen most of it.
Ruth Essel.
Present.
Toby Shepherd Block.
Present.
Me. Community Board 1. Is that a yes or just a little sound? Community Board 2.
Present.
Hi. Community Board 3.
Present.
Hello. Community Board 4. Community Board 5. I think I saw Community Board 5.
Walter Clayton.
Hello. Community Board 6.
Hello.
Hello.
Walter Clayton from Community Board 5.
Welcome. Community Board 7. Community Board 8.
I'm here.
Hello. Community Board 9. Community Board 10.
Here.
Hello. Community Board 11. Community Board 12.
I'm present.
Hello. Community Board 13. Community Board 14. Organizational representatives, Cures.
Present.
Guardians of Flushing Bay.
Present.
LIC Partnership. Mr. T. Carding.
Present.
NYCH2O.
Yes, present.
Queens Botanical Garden.
Present.
And I think we have a new rep. Welcome. Queens Chamber of Commerce.
Present Rona Davis for Tom Gretsch.
Welcome. Queens County Farm Museum.
Present.
Sutphen Boulevard Bid. Tully Environmental. Waste Management. Great. That concludes roll call.
Jana Ferrera present, just missed.
Welcome, thank you.
Thanks.
And then Bilal as well. I don't know if you saw.
Oh,
Hi,
Bilal.
Janet.
So,
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you everyone so much for joining. Do you know, Vanessa, do we have a quorum?
We do.
All
Thanks,
right,
everyone.
wonderful. Thank you, everyone. This is very exciting stuff. So I think to start, we have a few things to vote on. I'll turn it over to Mary to start to talk about the all SWAB letter to Mayor Adams.
Okay, it's been passed by the Brooklyn and the Manhattan SWABs. You were given the letter to to read. We're urging you strongly to endorse it. This is from the Legislative Committee. It was a letter that was requested by Council Member Nurse, who is the chair of the Sanitation Committee, just to kind of keep these issues front and center with the mayor. She felt that was an important thing to do. And the letter has been worked on now over the course of several months. So tonight we're going to consider it for passage, like our sister SWABs have passed it. So would you like me to make a motion or to pass the letter? Is there a second then?
Can the letter be read?
It's quite lengthy.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Do you want to just give a quick summary and then maybe we can discuss a bit and then have a motion, or if you moved, we can do that. But do you want to just summarize the letter?
Yes,
please.
The letter endorses 3 elements of the 5-0 waste bills. And I'm gonna pull up, I don't have the letter in front of me. I apologize for not having that right up in front of me here. Okay, here we go. I citing the particular provisions. So it's intro 0274-2022, a local law to amend the administrative code of the city of New York in relation to establishing a goal of 0 waste for New York City by 2030. Intro 0275-2022, a local law to amend the administrative code of the city of New York in relation to the goal of 0 waste to landfill with 0 waste to incinerators amendment, which was also requested by Councilmember Nurse. And then 3, intro 0244-2022, a local law to amend the administrative code of the city of New York in relation to residential curbside organics collection, with the provision that this program is mandatory intact. And it makes it clear in the bill, or in our letter, that the mandatory provision is directed toward buildings, multifamily buildings, not focusing on single use or single residence. The city residents and multifamily dwellings, participation is an issue of access, not of desire. 40 to 60% of residents in multifamily dwellings responded that they wanted access to curbside organics. However, less than 20% of building managers have demonstrated a willingness to participate in the program. Based on this reality, the provision that outside collection be made mandatory is designed not to burden homeowners or residents, but rather to align through local law building management's behavior with the residents' desire to participate. And enforcement can focus on building owners and managers in multifamily buildings and warnings issued before any tickets and fines. So, and it says that there should be at least an 18 to 24 month period of data collection analysis before enforcement. This will ensure that necessary adjustments are made to the program, because I know that that was a concern in Community District 12 in particular. So that was taken into account. So that's kind of a summary of the major parts of it. And, you know, you can, yeah, and I could put the link to the letter in the chat. Why don't I do that too?
David. Arthur Raddatz with us on this new development tonight. Arthur, thank you. Back here, home to the mass shootings in California.
I think
Great.
Rachel beat you to it.
Oh, sorry, I'm behind the beat here. Okay, so you know, we could make a motion, we could have a second, and then we could have discussion. Typically, that's how this is done.
Sure. Yeah. So are you making a motion to adopt the letter?
I am to adopt
Yeah,
and to send it.
Mary, it's Andrea. Typically, it's discussion first and then the
Is it?
motion. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Reverend Thorbs, enlighten us.
I would have a discussion first before making any motions.
Very
Right.
good.
Great.
That's authoritative. All right.
Perfect. So do folks have questions for Mary about the letter, or comments in general about the letter?
Why does it have to be so confusing?
It's actually, it's long, but it's pretty clear. I mean, if
No. I'm a real dumb person and it's not clear to me. And I've read it and reread it and reread it again. I'm sorry, Mary. I think the mayor is wrong.
Okay. What don't you understand
Everything.
in
I'm
terms of?
sorry. I'm being really stupid about this, but there's three parts to this letter, and it's backing up the mayor, who doesn't really give a rat's patoot to this city.
It's actually not the mayor's bill. It's council member Nurse's bill. I mean, we're trying to you know, support the bills. They didn't come from him. This is not, he had the you know, he's focused on rats, and of course he supported the Queen's pilot, you know, in part because of rat abatement, but you know, that's more his thing.
We're pushing for zero waste. And pretty much the letter spells out what we're asking for is legislation for administrative code to include zero waste by 2030. Then we're also asking not only for zero waste to the landfills by 2030, but also zero waste to the incinerators, which are all good environmental initiatives. The last piece of it has to do with mandatory composting. As you know, we just had the initiative, the pilot project, which we all wanted for Queens. And all we're simply saying in this letter is, let's get to mandatory curbside organics pickup. So those are the three elements of the bill. And the city council is asking us to write this letter to urge the mayor to do his part around these initiatives.
He's not going to.
Well, he may not, but we gotta ask. Yeah, that's the whole point.
Okay.
I have a question about, have we not signed on as a SWAB, as Queen SWAB, just because we haven't had quorum for the past couple meetings, or has there been major questions or issues that haven't already been addressed? I heard the one that was addressed about not finding people for a certain amount of time, which I agree with. Is there anything else that was like
Controversial? Not really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
no,
Great.
and this was like state of waste and Queens stuff, we were always for composting. That was the main sticking point, was the worry that, especially in lower income neighborhoods, people were penalized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And quorum. We did need quorum, but the letters
Right.
needed to be fine tuned, and now it is.
Great.
And so we have sign off by Manhattan SWAB as well as Brooklyn SWAB, and we're bringing it before our board for a vote.
Great. Well, I have a lot of friends who live in buildings who want to compost and their management doesn't do it. And as a member of this board, I want to advocate for them. So, yay, let's do it.
I see Adam has his hand raised. Adam.
Yep. Hey, first, someone has a TV or a radio in the background. If you could turn that off, because the rest of us can hear that. I think the aspirational goals, I think great, fantastic. I think we can all agree we want to get to zero waste. And I understand that there's the semantics of a goal versus a plan. I just would prefer that we were supporting a plan as opposed to a goal, because a goal doesn't get you where you want to go. The plan does. But I understand that, from an activist community, that the word goal has a lot of power and a lot of meaning to folks. I feel in a governmental sense that a plan is what we really want to get down to brass tacks, is how we're going to do it, because goal doesn't get you there, because doesn't show a pathway to get there. The mandatory composting, I mean, that's also vanilla flavor in the activist community, because we all want to get food waste out of the waste stream. Again, I think it's a more complex path to get there than just saying it's mandatory. And the recent implementation of the LA program, which actually was a 6-year run-up to implementing that curbside program, there's just a lot of moving parts in a big, complicated city. It's not just as simple as we've seen before of throwing bins out there and then having enforcement folks go out and warn and then fine. There's a lot more that we as an advisory board should have a voice in, that we should be talking about how we want to educate people and how we want to phase it in so that we can make sure that this round is a successful one. So I would just sort of the mandatory, to me, it's sort of an easy way out to as opposed to doing the harder work about how do you get there and how do you actually do it. And then the last feedback that I have is the no waste incineration. I think I sent around the contract that's in place till 2033 that the city has signed with Covanta. So, I read through the cancellation clause on that, and it's not going to be canceled. So it's an aspirational goal, which is great, but I think where that belongs is in the solid waste master planning process, because we got to get through that 20-year contract that the city has with Covanta right now. And then we need to help participate in charting a pathway forward where we want to put the garbage that's left over after we make those other efforts. So that's my feedback. So I understand, and I would fully expect this group to tonight to support the first two zero waste goals that are in the letter. I would say I'd suggest we moderate our tone on the anti-incineration component, just so that we're realists as opposed to idealists in that sense.
Okay.
Right, thank you. Yeah, and so I think the law with the goal, my understanding was that zero waste by 2030 was a mayoral policy and nothing was ever done with that. And so this bill basically just codifies that without having like you're saying, no follow-up steps other than reporting on progress. I think that's what this bill does. So obviously very short of that plan. But yes, I saw Susan Cleary, you had your hand up. I don't know if you.
No, I put it down.
Okay, great, perfect.
Like I
So-
said, I'm
so-
stupid. I got a little confused.
No problem.
So
Hi,
Brian-
sorry about that. This is James
Okay.
from Community Board 7. Do you see my name or is it under Catherine's? I'm
I
just
see Catherine, but I see your image is yours.
Yeah, it doesn't, I don't see my name present, but this is James from Environmental Chair of CB7. And I
Nice
don't see the name.
graphics.
And also, this is Cangela Moore. I wasn't sure if you all took attendance, but I did chime in a little late. Thank you.
Wonderful. Welcome, both of you.
Just a follow-up question, Ryan. So you're
Yeah.
saying that really the thinking behind the SWAB supporting the goal is to codify de Blasio's goal of zero waste, but no plan of how we would get there, just that it's a concept that we want to move towards.
That was my understanding. I don't know if others have a different take. That's what I thought was the impetus behind the bill. Was it was a policy goal under de Blasio that kind of got talked about less and less, and then there was a question about whether this administration was continuing that goal or kind of letting it die. I don't know if other folks have different information on the intent of the bill or why, but that was what I had heard.
Yeah. Yeah, Ryan, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I even remember going back where Reynoso, oh, let me take off this mask, I'm outside, where Reynoso, he had hearings around this where he was seeking information from Department of Sanitation as to the status, as to where they are in terms of getting to zero waste by 2030. So it was never law, so this codifies it. I think it's important. I think we may not have all the language that we would like, but this at least puts it in the books, and it forces the agencies to begin to look at a plan. We don't have to come up with a plan. That's not our job. We would support the legislation, and then the agency's responsibility is to come up with the plan to ensure that we get to zero waste by 2030. We have the state looking at it also. They're looking at zero waste, I think it's by 2050, zero emissions, emissions by a certain period of time. But that's the agency's responsibility. That's DEC's responsibility, certainly not us. So to not vote on this, I think would be a travesty, because we need to get going, we need to get started. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But we need to put some pressure on the agencies to do the right thing.
I would definitely say our role in the Queens Solid Waste Advisory Board and the historic reasons for the creation of the SWABs and the CRAB was to be active participants in the planning process. And that's
I don't
definitely.
see I don't see that in the charter. If
Oh,
you
it's
can show
definitely
me that in the charter,
Oh,
that
yeah,
would be great.
local law 19 is definitely codified in there.
Well, okay, but the bottom line is in terms of not voting on this bill because you want the perfect, it's not going to happen. We need to start. We need to be able to get to zero waste. We need to get curbside organics pickup. We need to have that and know that it's there and it's in place. So those are all reasons for us to move on ahead and join our brothers and sisters, Brooklyn SWAB and Manhattan SWAB.
So I see for hands, I saw Laura, Gil, Mary, and Evie. So we'll go in that order. Laura.
Yeah, I just want to say that I 100% agree with Andrea. This is a strong letter. These are good bills, and I absolutely think we should vote for it.
Yes.
Wonderful. Gil.
Sorry, I'm having a problem. I'm muting myself. I also agree with a lot of what Adam is saying. This is not a perfect thing. I also agree that we need to be helping shape the policies when this does become a goal. But I think there needs to be a goal in order for the government to actually ask for this to be for help with it, because then they're supposed to do it. And I think we should move this ahead. We should not burn the good for the perfect in this one. I agree with that too. Thank you.
Great. So Mary, Evie, and then Rev Thorbs.
Right. I just want to second what everybody else just said. And this comports with the climate justice working groups work in the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act scoping plan. They said, you know, this composting and moving towards zero waste is the single most important thing in the waste area that you could do to reduce greenhouse gases. And this is what's happening at the state level. I mean, this is just, it's all moving in that direction. Also with Senator May's EPR bill, it's all of a piece, including the incineration part of it. So, you know, we should move ahead.
Here.
Evie, and then Rev Thorbs.
Hi, it's Evie. I'm new to the group.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. I guess I just don't see the letter and a plan being mutually exclusive. So I think you know, I would support you know, voting in favor of the letter. And then if there is planning to be done, then perhaps that happens you know, following the vote.
Great, thank you. Rev Thorbs.
Yes, in regards to this, like most things, the city puts the cart before the horse. So my question is, are we prepared to help lead them in what needs to be done and how it needs to be done? And I say this only because in the back of my mind, I'm picturing all the apartments that's in downtown Jamaica and the composting being sat out. But if it's not handled correctly, what a mess I will have on Jamaica Avenue along with rats. So I'm just trying to figure how are the residents in these apartment buildings in every apartment going to get that out? Are they going to bring it down to their garbage areas? Are they going to drop it down the chute? What is that going to look like? Who's going to separate it at the bottom? Who's going to get it in those cans? Who's going to get it to the street? So we do this letter, but we have to be ready to do work behind it. And every single borough that signed off better start working on how this needs to look, because we cannot leave it in the hands of this administration or any administration, because everything sounds great. Look at what we're dealing with marijuana. It all sounds great, but nobody put any regulations in place to keep it away from schools, houses of worship, residential homes. So we've got work ahead of us.
Yeah. Well, the work started with when we had curbside organics pickup. It included the buildings. A lot of buildings did not participate. And that's part of the work that the SWAB, our SWAB, was willing to come together and do. But first we wanted to get numbers from Disney in regards to participation level at buildings level. So that was work that started and needed to start when the pilot project began with
Oh, no,
curbside organics pickup.
Ms. Scarborough, I totally get it. But even with
Yeah.
that, the community board had to speak to them about the fact that they stopped picking up compost now until April. You just came out with a program, you just got everyone into it, and everyone is excited. And now DSNY has stopped picking up compost until the month of April.
Yeah, until March, yeah.
So this is why I'm saying we definitely have to have our ducks in a row when it comes to helping them lay it out and what we need it to look like. We just can't leave it in their laps to do the right thing.
Reverend, you're so right.
Well, I think that's what we're here to do as a SWAB. Yeah.
But that's different than what you were just saying though, Andrea, because you were saying that we don't have a role in helping make a plan. But I mean, totally, because we need just what Reverend Forbes just said. I mean, we got to be at the table with the plan because we see what a failure means, which is what DSNY does really well, which is put bins out and send trucks out to collect them. But if we don't have a way to tie up all the loose ends and make sure that it works, just failure number two.
Well,
I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, because part of when I hear myself talking about, advocating for these positions, I think it's part because being the subject expert, and I think I understand what really goes into making a success as opposed to an idea or a concept.
Yeah. Well, irrespective of that it's an idea or concept, you have to begin there. That's where it begins, and then you build. And now we will move from the idea to a building process. Where did we start with curbside organics pickup? Wasn't it an idea? Wasn't it something that we wanted to see happen? And guess what? It moved from the idea to reality, and it happened. It happened for us in Queens a lot earlier than we thought it was going to happen. Did we get there with the buildings? No, we didn't. But then that just requires recognition that we're not there with the buildings and then doing the work. But to move away from it, waiting for the ideal is the wrong approach. We have an idea, we push for the idea, it becomes reality. Let's move further.
So those were all the hands that I saw. Does anyone have comments, or are we ready to make a motion?
I move that the letter that was put forth by Mary and that has been approved by Brooklyn SWAB and Manhattan SWAB, I make a motion that we vote on this letter as a body.
Second.
Great. So we have a motion, we have a second. The motion is to approve the letter. Do we need any more discussion or just go right into the vote?
One last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing.
Yeah, Susan.
I did not see anything in the letter that said to the mayor, what are you gonna do for the areas, the neighbors, the neighborhoods that need immediate attention? I'm sorry. I said I'm stupid. But to me, the Reverend is right. because I see it happening here in my nice little white neighborhood.
Yeah. Well,
And-
I think the letter, first of all, is to get the mayor on board. I mean, that's the purpose. We're nudging at this point.
You think?
Yeah. City council is the ones
He's
that
not
have to
on
vote.
board for anything.
Well,
I'm
let's
sorry.
nudge. Let's nudge. Let's get all the SWABs on board. Let him
Okay.
see a long list of organizations that is supporting this, and let's see what he does.
Well, can we fire him if he does nothing?
I think that's beyond our scope.
I think so. I'm sorry, I had to say that.
No problem.
I'm gonna
No
mute now.
Sure, in a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go ahead and take a vote. So everyone in favor of endorsing the letter and sending it on, say aye.
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 Maybe.
And
I say yes.
Maybe.
any opposed?
Me.
I see 2. Any abstentions? Seeing none, it looks like that passes.
Yay.
Wonderful,
Yay.
wonderful. The last thing we have before we turn it over to our guest for tonight, we have meeting minutes for the past 3 meetings. Does anyone have any changes, or does someone want to make a motion to just adopt all 3?
I make a motion to adopt all 3
Wonderful. Do we
With
have
the
a second?
necessary changes.
Second.
with any necessary changes.
Great, perfect. Does anyone have any changes that they saw?
Nope.
Wonderful.
Well done.
Okay, all in favor of approving all 3 meeting minutes?
Aye.
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 I say yes.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Wonderful. All right. Thank you, everyone. This is wonderful. I'm glad these are approved and off of our docket. And now I'm going to turn it over. We have Annie from WEACT to give us an update on something we've been working on in the EJ committee about disadvantaged communities. So I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. And I just want to say, even though I was only here for the last 5 minutes of your meeting, I really appreciate the discussion, and composting and waste is a increasingly large issue for WEAC's membership, and so has become an issue that we are working on more and more. And yeah, I agree with everything you all are saying, and it sounds like there's a lot of momentum to really do some great work in New York. So thank you for everything you all do. So again, my name is Annie. I'm the Climate Justice Campaign Coordinator at WEACT for Environmental Justice. We are a community-based organization that has been organizing in West Harlem since 1988 to build healthier communities and healthier lives for our neighborhoods. And while we are focused specifically on Northern Manhattan, which we consider to be Inwood, Washington Heights, and Harlem, we do a lot of advocacy at the city and state level to pass bills that affect environmental justice communities, across New York State. And we actually recently have started a federal policy team as well, and who are helping to navigate, the federal landscape, which is interesting. I'll say that. I'm happy I live in New York. That's all I'll say. And so, yeah, I am here today at the invitation of the Queen SWAB to talk a little bit about the state's definition of disadvantaged communities, which they are hoping to adopt formally next month. And I think that WEACT was approached to talk about this topic because our policy director, Sonal Jessel, was actually a member of the Climate Justice Working Group that helped put together our definition of disadvantaged community. So I received the letter that you all submitted to the Climate Justice Working Group, which was a fantastic letter, and I can explain a little bit why I think that's going to really help address a lot of the concerns that you have. But I'm also happy to just maybe open it up and answer questions, or if there's something specific you all want me to talk about, I'm happy to also get into that.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. If folks have questions, definitely raise your hand. But I think that that's exactly what we'd love to hear more about.
Yeah, so it is in terms of just like how the definition came to be. Or-
Yeah, and then anything going forward, if there are things that we can do, I think that's the big. And Bilal, if you have specifics as well, definitely jump in. But Mary, did you have a question to start?
I think it would be really useful to hear Annie's reactions to the letter and like kind of in the discussion, make that part of her exposition.
Yeah, that sounds great. I can build in some of the recommendations you all included. So I think where I would want to start off is by acknowledging the limit. This was an advisory board to the Department of Environmental Conservation. So while we did have input, and by we, you know, Sonal was the representative at We Act, and we were one of many groups that were on the advisory board, but we, as much as we pushed for our priorities, and We Act, along with many of the other organizations there, really ensured that environmental justice was centered in a lot of the conversations. Ultimately, it was DEC that took or left the recommendations that we made. And so some of the comments in the letter are important for us to pass on to DEC, specifically around the public participation and the lack thereof of advertising for that. You know, that wasn't a responsibility of the Climate Justice Working Group. That's really on DEC to do. They did have a 120-day public comment period for the definition of disadvantaged communities, and they did actually extend that. And I think that was because there was a lack of participation in the beginning, which I think points to exactly what you all were feeling was not a great outreach strategy to make sure that communities were providing feedback. As well as the comment on just like the way that the map functions and how it can be difficult and challenging to interact with the map. That again is something that we will make sure that we pass on to DEC. In terms of the definition of disadvantaged community, this is where I would say the advisory board, the Climate Justice Working Group, had the most input. And there were limitations and there were challenges to making that definition. I think the major one that I saw based on the comments in the letter were that the map had to use complete data sets. So they were, it had to be basically data that has been like formally collected and is posted and represents the full state. And so that can be a challenge for some of these hyper local and specific incidents that you all were pointing to in your letter. Another thing that is important to take into consideration is that the definition of disadvantaged communities was a combination of environmental and socio-demographic indicators. So some census tracts might have that environmental indicator, but might not have had the socio-demographic indicator. And so that may have been why it wasn't included. There were a lot of public comments to point out census tracts specific that maybe were considered disadvantaged that really shouldn't be. And what I wanted to say why your letter was really well done and why your group approached it the correct way is by giving specific census tracts, like you all gave to the number and the, you know, the indicator of why you expected it to be considered disadvantaged. That helps in what in this period right now that the Climate Justice Working Group is in, which is reading through literally every single public comment that they got and talking through the recommendations that were provided. And so when you can provide a specific census tract with a reason for why you believe it's disadvantaged, that really helps the conversation versus saying, you know, Northeast Queens has flooding and it should have been considered. You know, that's less specific and easier and harder for them to really integrate into the final definition. And so I think one thing that I want to emphasize before I pass it back to you all is that the definition isn't finalized. It's supposed to come out. They were hoping to have it come out at some point in February, but that really is determined on if they can get through all of the public comments. So they are reading those comments, you know, one by one. And that does mean that, you know, they are going to be looking at the letter that you all submitted the comment that you all submitted and taking into account the recommendations that you put in there.
Just curious, this is Andrea. In regards to Southeast Queens and flooding, there is much documentation around that we have a high water table. Hence the reason that flooding is so frequent in our community. There are some locations where there's no sunshine. It's 24/7, where residents, the pump is there, and thank God they have a pump, they can pump the water out. So when we looked at that and we saw inland flooding was 0, it was clear the homework was not done around that particular issue. Furthermore, if you go to the federal map DAC have those very locations in as disadvantaged communities on their map. So we were like bugged as to why is it the federal map is showing these census tracts as disadvantaged community status and the state map doesn't? Where is the disconnect? What's going on? So hence the reason we wanted to have this meeting for clarity, to help us better understand.
Yeah, I think that, as I said, I can't give more information than the fact that they needed to use complete data sets. So like the water table point that you're making is very interesting. And I'm wondering if there is and you would know this better than me. I would wonder if there is a data set that gets to that statewide. I can list the potential climate change risks that they included in the final definition, which were extreme heat projections, flooding in coastal and tidally influenced areas, flooding in inland areas, low vegetative cover, agricultural land, and then driving time to hospitals or urgent and critical care. Again, I'd be interested to see why the federal map did capture the very real climate risks that Southeast Queens has, while the state did not. I don't think that I could give an answer of exactly why. This was all, again, it was like a combination of different factors. So there are some places in New York State that do have climate risks, but are not considered disadvantaged because they don't meet other criterias. That being said, again, I think it's fantastic that you all put these specific census tracts into that letter, because the Climate Justice Working Group will go and look very specifically at the census tracts that you're speaking about. And that, it means that you re-brought the conversation back to life. It doesn't mean that it's, going to get shrugged off.
Okay, and above and beyond that, the ground truthing part of this, making sure that there are folks, activists, environmental activists from communities, lending their understanding, lending what they know of the community. We did not see that when we looked at that CJWG group. We see folks that are representing other parts of our city, but not necessarily representing Queens, and in my case, Southeast Queens. So when you look at what the mandate was that they were supposed to have a separate advisory board. That's what's written in the CLCPA, and that did not occur. And it leads to situations like this, where we now have inaccuracies in the mapping, and no advisory group, no ground truthing for certain areas.
Thank you. I see a couple hands. So why don't we start, Kat? And I saw you put something in the chat as well.
Yeah, DEC is starting to investigate what the CAC, the CAC, will look like. the Community Advisory Committee. And they've asked us who to involve, and we've definitely given out, Andrea, of course, we've given your information, but the meeting is tomorrow. And I'm wondering, did that not circulate? Did I just pinged you, Ryan, and Andrea, your email bounced back. So the info should be in your email, Ryan, if you
Okay.
want to share that. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone for the meeting and then emailing from the laptop. So
No problem. Yeah, I can share that.
yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody knows we are pushing DEC to be more inclusive. Andrea, you know, we signed on to the letter, we wrote our own. We want to make sure that the Community Advisory Committee is more reflective of Queens, most at-risk communities. And that you all, if you can make it to tomorrow night's an initial meeting, please join us.
And thank you, Kat, for the borough president's support of that letter. Truly
Without
appreciate
you, you know, can happen, but.
Okay, can I just say something about the meeting tomorrow? The
Yeah.
meeting tomorrow is air quality monitoring from DEC. That's Dirk Felton's group. They're the only part of the CLCPA planning and implementation so far that has had two-way communication with the public and has reached out in a more robust way locally. And the meeting tomorrow is, you know, they were responsive to making changes in their monitoring boundaries. They did it in Southeast Queens. They did it around rail yards. It's unfortunately it's gravity monitoring, so they might catch it, they might not. But that is the only part of the process that was two-way communication. And they're going to give, I guess, some results, and there will be a, you know, some kind of a group formed up, but that is only one little piece of this. That is not the, you know, the major part of, it's not the Climate Justice Working Group. It's not the Climate Action Committee, which happened within NYSERDA and other parts of DEC, which the public has really been shut out of, only got one-way communication, only on the drafts, has never been able to get the documentation, you know, and then the voting is going to happen without any more public input. So what we really need is to get somebody from Queens into the next iteration of, you know, whatever the Climate Justice Working Group and the Climate Action Committee are going to be. These air quality people, they've been very open. They haven't been the problem.
Great, thank you for that. Bilal, I see you, and then Kangela, you're next. So Bilal.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank our presenter, Annie, for first of all coming to present to us this evening. So thank you for honoring our invitation. Second of all, everyone, I echo everyone's sentiments. One thing I just want to harp on is the, and I figure that We Act and the other organizations have a perspective, but hopefully when we can hear from DEC soon. They backed out from this meeting due to the fact that they didn't have the vote, and they didn't want to come, I guess, unprepared, or they didn't want to receive the type of heat that they would have received in this space, because clearly the public was shut out. I mean, the public comment period, we learned about that like the last minute, the SWAB. We learned that really the last minute about the public comment period. So everyone had rushed to their community boards, rushed to their civics, rushed to submit testimony. And, you know, when you rush, you know, things get missed, and sometimes people don't get the opportunity to really submit public testimony. They claimed that there was some meeting that took place in Long Island City. I think that was bogus. And I work in that area. I frequent that neighborhood a lot. I just never saw any advertisement for a promotion for that. So it leads to me a couple of things. And again, Queens has been left out. Queens has been left out of this whole process. Certain communities are highlighted on the map, but a lot of communities are missing. And as Andrea has spoken about, the situations in Southeast Queens, the Community Board 12, with the flooding and the coastal flooding, Far Rockaway falls underneath that. We know that from the impacts of Superstorm Sandy. That to me is obvious, but clearly if the federal level already has etched these communities as disadvantaged communities, it just behooves me that the state should do the same. And the metrics might be slightly different, but they're still disadvantaged communities regardless. And then also the fact that the World Trade Center, or the Freedom Tower, formerly known as the World Trade Center, is labeled as a disadvantaged community. I mean, I get it because of its Lower Manhattan, and that also flooded during Superstorm Sandy. But these guys are billion dollar tax breaks on this situation. And you have communities, you mean to tell me that the state will give them funding, because that's what's going to happen. The federal level, it has money that's going to trickle down to the state, and through the assembly, that money is going to reach from the assembly members, reach to the communities, and other communities are not going to get that funding for their climate projects and infrastructure. I don't think the Freedom Tower needs that infrastructure or that type of money when a lot of money went into that whole process to begin with. So that really took me off, I was like, whoa, and you have communities that were totally missed.
I mean, the only thing that I can say is just from WEACT's perspective, like wearing my WEACT hat, there is a lot of solidarity here because Northern Manhattan is historically an area that does not receive the investment that it needs or deserves, while we watch our neighbors directly south of us, continue to thrive. And so I do want to emphasize, while, our attention may not have been, not that it wasn't focused on Queens, because as a representative on the Climate Justice Working Group, the advisory board really needs to think the whole state. But I 100% hear and understand the frustration that we're finding with this map, which there are flaws in the way that it kind of, the chips fell. And there are districts that there are census tracts that need to be reevaluated as to why they are included in the disadvantaged definition. And there are census tracts that need to be reevaluated as why they were not included. And that's what the Climate Justice Working Group is doing right now. So I again want to assure you all that the comments that you guys provided are really helpful, and they're not going to go unread. I cannot make any promises of what will happen. I don't sit on the advisory board, but it is something that I will bring to Sonal's attention to make sure that it is a discussion, because we know that Southeast Queens, there's a long history of environmental injustices. And so this is something that, clearly was missed in the way that the calculation was done, in the same ways that it picked up on some areas that really just should not, be considered disadvantaged.
Great. So I see Cangela and then Rev Thorbs.
I just want to thank Andrea for bringing this up, because definitely Southeast Queens need to be added. I am one of those individuals that have the pumps that is affected by climate change in regards to high table water. So this is definitely something that needs to be inclusive. And also when we look at the natural waterways that are in our communities as well. So just thank you, Andrea. And I just look for progression in regards to the situation.
Great, thank you. Rev Thorbs.
I agree with Ms. Scarborough. And this is where I also had a problem with the bill that they wanted to pass and that they did pass the last time we voted. When it came to CB12, I specifically asked them with this bill, the money that's supposed to be allotted to the communities that are having the flooding issues, will Southeast Queens get a part of that money, get a part of that to deal with our flooding? Because we have pumps that they can turn on, but they refuse. The city refuses. I know this from a meeting maybe over 5 to 10 years ago. They said that they will turn the pumps on in 2026. And we asked them why. And their answer basically was because that's just what they felt like doing. They had no intentions, and that it was going to cost them too much money. They want to label us disadvantaged. The only disadvantage is that we have people that are lording over us, that are in control, that can say when your trash gets picked up and when it doesn't get picked up, or when we want to take something away from you because somebody else needs something. And we're the group that they come to. We're the community board that they come to take things away from us. It can't be just in the heaviness, Annie, is going to fall in your lap. It cannot be that they just think about it and then they move on to the next topic. They have to have us in this conversation. We have people who are suffering. No one should be running a pump 24 hours a day. Would they like to be running a pump in their home? And with the price of electricity right now, my bill is enormous. I can only imagine what this lady's bill is for running a pump 24 hours a day. These groups and these agencies, that's this whole disenfranchised state map, this is purposeful. This is not a mistake. This is not an oversight. This is purpose. This is done on purpose. If the federal side can see it, then why the heck can't the state side see it? And it's time for somebody to bridge the gap. And if we have to bridge the gap, then let's bridge it. But this is constant. This is not something that just happens once in a blue moon. This is things that go on in our communities constantly. And we have to fight daily to make these things right. Somebody's got to have a conscience. Somebody has to have a conscience, because this is ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last hand I saw. Oh, Mary. And you're muted, Mary.
Very sorry.
No
Annie,
problem.
in the chat, I just put an article that appeared 8 days ago about this flooding. And so, you know, it's like, it's a thing.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize, like, you know, even though we're all the way up in Harlem, we've heard about the flooding that is experienced in Southeast Queens. So I don't want you all to feel that, you know, this issue is more, I also don't want to speak for government, because we're not government, we're a community-based organization, but like doing EJ work in New York City, we hear you and we stand in solidarity with this community. And yeah, I'll pass this all on to our policy director. And, you know, I'm not in those meetings. I can't say more than that, but I just yeah, I want you all to know that like you are heard, and it is agreed. And I think we feel very strongly about the way that funding is spent at the state level. We see it all the time that environmental justice communities are considered environmental justice communities because they continue to be disinvested in. And so there is a purposefulness to that. And that's kind of, you know, a lot of the work that we do is to really kind of bring more, bring more justice to that situation.
Great, thank you. So I don't see hands, but in the interest of time, knowing that you're not on the committee yourself, but do you know for next steps, like what should we be looking for? Are there ways that we can be involved that you know of for next steps?
So, I mean, the real next steps are that they're going to be finalizing the definition of disadvantaged communities, and so finalizing the census tracts that are considered disadvantaged. And I think that you all have participated in the sense that you submitted the public comment, and that's like a great first step. Yeah, I mean, I hear you 100%, and I encourage Queens to like really advocate to get groups onto these advisory boards so that there can be better representation. You know, there are the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance, NEJA, they're representing all of New York City and they are on the advisory board. I think it was tricky because it had to cover the full state. So there's a group in Buffalo, there's a group from the Adirondacks, there's, you know, they tried to really do some geographical equity there. But yeah, I hear you. And I think that the unfortunate reality is in the world that we live in is that, you know, our communities have to fight harder to be heard. And so I really am like, encourage you all to keep doing that because these conversations are important.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Any last comments before we move on?
I'd like to thank Annie for coming. I want to believe she knew it was going to be a hard crowd. But you had courage and you came on, and all I ask is that you take it back and to the folks that's sitting at that table, help them. Okay. Sorry guys, I'm in the hospital. And so thank you. Just thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, definitely echoing that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And you all have my word. I will pass on this information to our policy director, and she's a good advocate. So
Thank you, Annie.
very much.
Thank you, Annie. We'll connect afterwards. Thank you.
Definitely. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Great. Perfect.
Great meeting. Great meeting.
Real quick, I will just email you all rather than going over now the update on curbside composting data. The DSMY put out a flyer, which you probably have seen, that I think we emailed that around. I did another sort of dive into the data that's on open data, so I'll send that. The only thing to add to make sure that everyone saw as you're having conversations with neighbors, anyone about the program, is the restarting. They have set that as the week of March 27th. So for your own personal knowledge and for conversations you have with folks, the program will be starting up again the week of March 27th. So moving on to some committee reports, I think what we'll do, we'll start. So one update on committees. We've consolidated education and communications into one committee. So they all met earlier this week for the first time as the new Education and Communications Committee, which is co-chaired by Jenny and Janet. So I don't know if either or both of you want to give an update. I think there were some next steps that you all had as well for us.
Hey, Jenny, let me know if you want to like add anything. Yeah, so we combined our committees. It's right now, just let you know, like Anita Chan, she resigned as a member. So that's why we combined. And I think overall, it's great, especially with the education committee, because we've seen some overlaps in general with like the resource and things we want to share, whether it's, you know, through like plans on like newsletters and you know, through social media or whatever it may be. But right now we're trying to figure out like filling the holes, especially for the gap that Anita, you know, like help oversaw like the website. So just, you know, we kind of pulled together, we're like finalizing just like a brief description of the like what that entails for the website. I feel like when people hear the website, it's like, oh my God, like I'm going to be managing a website, but really it's just like little maintaining, just, you know, whether it's like adding to the events calendar, you know, website design is really just a remote, flexible, it's like little, you know, quick updates really. And once we get that description, and we'll definitely send it you know, send it to the SWAB members and just see if, you know, anyone's interested in volunteering. Right now it's about 3 people or maybe more. Jenny, I don't know how much on the education committee side, but we really want to definitely push through. And I think that there's, so yeah, once we get that out, you'll definitely like see the list. Another thing is like, just speaking of like, I really just trying to get understanding of like what the protocol is when it comes to like if we were to seek someone that's outside, if we were, I don't know if it's even allowed, like if we just post something on Instagram or this person has to be a member on QSWAB in order to volunteer. So just kind of clearing those, you know, like what, you know, like what the protocol is and like who can join as a, you know, to help us with the website. And also it kind of aligned with like the question of like funding, like for future for QSWAB, like is there anything happening with funding? Because if anything, if we don't have anybody, then that's something that we could look at too. Like if that plan, you know, B or C, whatever it may be, looking into that and like how do we go about that? And there's any previous conversations about like QSWAB having like a funding, if we were to like to just hire someone just to really like boost the website, especially when we want to, you know, do these, you know, as spring comes and then next thing you know, it's summer. When we're at these like events, like whether it's at the Queen's Farm or definitely like having that engagement in person. And we definitely want to have the website, you know, at its best during that time. Jenny, is there anything you want to add? I'm just kind of like looking over my notes.
I think you covered most of it. I was curious, Ryan, if you guys ever looked into or thought about Google Workspace for us?
Yeah, that's a good question. So to answer some of these questions, first, just, you know, for the committees, they're open for anyone. They don't have to be a member of the SWAB to work on the committee. I think with login stuff, we can maybe have a conversation about what that would look like. For funding, that's another question we'd have to get back to. I know that there are some grant opportunities to support the kind of work that we do that's been passed around, some from the other SWAB, some from the borough president's office. I don't know how we're structured internally. That was something that Amy kind of flagged, in that we don't have a bank account, for example. So I think we would need to potentially do some internal looking and perhaps structuring for how that would look. But I that's something that we could definitely explore. In terms of the Google workspaces, where I'm totally open, at least for a lot of things. I think we had tried Slack. That I got an email that our trial expired, but I don't think anyone was using it. But I'm totally open to stuff that you all want to try, but I don't think that we've currently explored anything for that. And that goes for all the committees too. If you all need something for like your work in the committee between your meetings, you know, we set up Zoom meetings for the committees, but if you want other spaces outside of that, besides just emailing each other, you can let us know and we can look into setting something like that up.
Okay, awesome, Ryan. Yeah, I'm just like adding those notes that you shared. And yeah, in other news, I will be on maternity leave in April, so that's another thing, trying to get some things going before that happens. Big changes. And yeah, and I also just a quick question before I forget, the executive. When do you guys have the executive meetings? I don't know if it's like the second or third week of the month, you know.
Yeah, we do. We typically do the Monday before this meeting. So we met last Monday. But great. And yes, I think this is a great opportunity for folks who are looking to plug into a committee. There are lots of different opportunities, whether it's keeping up with like our events calendar. We have more than just SWAB stuff. We have a lot of solid waste events and whatnot that are on the calendar. So part of that is keeping the calendar updated. We have social media. So there's a lot of opportunities to kind of plug in at various levels. Like you don't have to be an expert on the like website design stuff to help out with some of this. So great. So why don't we move on? I'll quickly go for the planning committee. Susan is out right now for this meeting, but the next planning committee meeting will be the 6th at 6 p.m. And so there wasn't a meeting for January. So I think that we'll be picking up at that meeting kind of what's going on for this new year. So why don't we start, or why don't we move next to Bilal, if you want to just add anything for environmental justice. Our guest today.
Yes, we will plan to meet. We do meet January. However, we have had our presenter this evening, but we do plan to meet in February for the EJ committee. So please do look out for the email and look out for a consistent schedule from February to the end of the fiscal year. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then Mary, do you have any additional updates beyond the letter? Yes.
And I'm sorry that Richard Nunez Lawrence left, it looks like, because he really should get a round of applause for getting us to approve Skip the Stuff, endorse that last year, and then also to, the legislative committee generally for and for this body for writing to the borough president. And then Kat is gone. I don't know whether anyone else is here from the borough president's office, but Skip the Stuff passed, and it had been hanging fire for 3 years. We kind of came in at the end and were given a lot of credit. So, well deserved. The borough president, I guess, put a word in, and then, it got on the agenda of the committee. It passed there, and then later in the day, it passed in the full city council. So it's a real, great win for this group. And just want to thank everybody. And of course, cafeteria culture, Rhonda and Debbie Lee, and Manhattan SWAB and Brooklyn SWAB. I mean, everyone's just real excited about it, and really, I mean, they did a tremendous amount.
Great.
So Surf Rider, I mean, there were just a lot of people that came together.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you for that. I think that's all the committees. In terms of an additional announcement about committees, the Manhattan SWAB has a kind of cross SWAB committee related to NYCHA, that they have members of Brooklyn and I believe the Bronx as well on. So I wanted to raise that here if you're interested, and they asked if we had someone who would join as a representative of Queens. I think that this is a really important area of work. Just as an example, the curbside composting did not include NYCHA residents, even in Queens. I think that they piloted a program at 1 or 2 sites in Queens, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details there. But solid waste management, composting, recycling, all of that is the population of NYCHA developments is larger than many cities in this country. So having they work with some of the environmental groups in NYCHA developments. So it's a really interesting opportunity, really important stuff. So if you're interested in that, I'm gonna to reach out to some folks to see if they'd be interested. But if you want to volunteer for that, reach out to me. It operates like regular committees here, where they meet once a month over Zoom, and then do stuff over email and phone in between. But it's basically just a committee that is hosted by SWAB, but has participants from the other SWABs. So if that's something that's interesting to you, let me know, and I'll reach out to some folks as well, because I really do. Oh, Bilal, that's wonderful. Because I really do think it's an important committee that we're a part of. The other kind of announcement is the borough president's office is going to be starting to go through appointments for the next term of QSWAB. So they've asked for any recommendations we have. So if you want to email me, if you know of individuals who are interested in joining in an individual capacity, particularly committee chairs and committee members, if you've seen folks from the public that have been involved that you want to kind of recommend, we can pass those names along, as well as other institutions. Yes, definitely. This is not that we can definitely be reappointed. This is just additional folks. If there's other organizations, I know we've talked about the Abuelas and the Eastern Queens Alliance. If you have orgs that would be interested or have expressed interest, they're not guarantees. We don't do the appointing, but they've said that they're open to suggestions that we can pass along. So feel free to send me any ideas you have there. And then finally, we've had the bylaws committee kind of in the back burner. I think we're really going to try to push to get a package for February to review, with the idea of voting on it in March. So we are basically not restarting because we're building off of work that we've done, but we are going to be restarting meetings. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know. And we can find time that works for folks. I think that is it for me for old and new business. Does anyone have any new business or announcements that they want to raise? Great. Yes, so it looks like at the bottom of the agenda are links for the upcoming committee meetings. A few to keep on hand. The 6th is the first one. That's the solid waste planning. The 9th is legislative. The 16th, I think, is education and communication, unless we want to move that time. And then our next QSWAB meeting will be the 22nd. And we'll send all those dates out, but just to give you a heads up, that's where we're at. So again, thank you all so much for coming. I'm glad we got to vote on some things that we've been having on the back burner, and I think we had some really great conversations tonight. So with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Wonderful. And second?
Second.
Wonderful. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.